Hello all, I am here back to teaching you the chapter that we were doing, that is life processes, and this is the fourth lesson in that chapter. So today I'll be dealing with part 6.22, which is we'll learn about a brief introduction about heterotrophic nutrition, what exactly it is and what it involves, and we will also we'll also do the topic 6.2.3, that is how do organisms obtain their nutrition. So what are the different modes, what are the different strategies, how does the digestion look like, right? So what are we waiting for? Let's start. Yes, so before we move into today's topic, let's just review about what we learned in the previous lesson. So we dealt with autotrophic nutrition in the previous lesson, and we learned that autotrophs or plants, they take in inorganic substances as food. So what does inorganic substances mean? They lack carbon-hydrogen bonds, and in this case, what inorganic substances do plants take in for food? Carbon dioxide and hydrogen. So as in the molecular form itself, they take in the inorganic substances and convert them into organic food substances on their own. So what are organic substances? Those which have many carbon atoms and those which have many carbon-hydrogen bondings in them. So in this case, they convert it in the form of glucose, right? And they do so on their own. So, what do they do? Just let's review. They take in food in the form of inorganic substances and convert them into organic food substances inside them, right? So they do that on their own. That's why autotrophs. Okay. So today we learn about heterotrophs. So how are they different from autotrophs? They, on the other hand, they have to take in all the organic substances they need to survive directly from other organisms. That is, they have to depend on other organisms, and they take in food in the form of organic substances itself. And they do so from other organisms by taking in those substances from other organisms, right? So heterotrophs cannot make their own food from inorganic substances alone, right? So they directly have to depend upon the organic substances present in other organisms. So if we have to define heterotrophic nutrition, we'll define it in this way. It is a type of nutrition in which organisms depend upon other organisms for food to survive. So they don't do it on their own. They depend on other organisms. So depending upon the type and availability of food material and how food is processed by the organism ultimately, there are different forms or strategies of heterotrophic nutrition. One form of heterotrophic nutrition is in which organisms break down food outside their body and then absorb it in that simplified, broken down form. Right? So, organisms like fungi, for example, mushrooms, bread molds, yeast, okay? All these organisms, all these fungi, they break down food outside their bodies, and they break that food into simpler substances, and then they absorb these simpler substances, right? And another form is in which organisms take in whole material and break it down inside their bodies. That means in the first case, digestion happens outside the body. In the second case, digestion happens inside the body. We are the classic example, right? And also other animals and even carnivorous plants. Okay, there are some insectivorous plants which take in flies or ants and then break it down inside their bodies, right? So, and the third form or strategy of heterotrophic nutrition is in which organisms derive nutrition by living on the body, on the surface, or inside the bodies of plants and animals. And this type of strategy is called as the parasitic nutritive strategy. Okay, so example, Arcus ticks, okay, lice that are found on or inside bodies of animals and humans. So another is leeches and even intestinal worms. So all these organisms adopt the parasitic nutritive strategy in which they derive nutrition from living plants or animals by residing in or on their bodies. Right? So how do all these organisms obtain the nutrition present in the food? That means, how does digestion take place in these organisms? So obviously, we saw that food and the way it is obtained is different in different organisms. Okay, we just saw the 3 forms or strategies. So in all these types of organisms, the digestive systems also, or the process of digestion also differs. Right? So firstly, if we take the simplest organisms, that is the single-celled organisms, food is taken in at once by the whole body in unicellular organisms. That means at once the whole body absorbs the food. And this usually occurs through the process of diffusion. So as the complexity increases, that is as we move into multicellular organisms, specialized structures come into play. We know that we have a huge functional digestive system which consists of organs and tissues that are specialized to digest all the different types of food that we consume. Right? So that is how organisms obtain their nutrition from food. The different ways in which they do are diffusion and full-fledged digestion, which has, so many steps: ingestion, digestion, absorption, excretion, right? So all of it we learn as we proceed in this chapter. So let's take nutrition in single-celled organisms in this lesson. So firstly, in amoeba, that is the simplest simplest mode of nutrition. So amoeba, as we know, are irregular shaped, and they move by moving the fluid and inside them. And what happens in amoeba when it detects food is that they extend their bodies into finger-like extensions, and these extensions are temporary. They use it only to grab food. Okay, so these finger-like extensions are called pseudopodia, and pseudopodia fuse over the food. You can see that clearly in the picture. So they fuse over the food, and they form a food vacuole. Vacuole is nothing but a sac. So if you hold food like that, okay, obviously a sac-like structure is formed around it. So that is nothing but the food vacuole. And inside the food vacuole, this complex food material is broken down into simpler ones. That is, digestion happens inside these food vacuoles. And these simpler substances then diffuse into the whole cytoplasm, thus nourishing the organism. Yes, so I hope from this explanation itself it's very clear, and if it is not, I have a video at hand wherein you can clearly in the real time see amoeba eating, right? So for this I have to thank a channel, and I'll mention the channel's name in the description box below, where you can see, if you go to that channel, you can see really interesting, so many experiments in real time. Yes, so here we can see amoeba eating Paramecia. So it's extending its pseudopodia, engulfing the paramecium. Actually now Paramecia, it has ingested 2 Paramecia, and now you can see a food vacuole has formed around the Paramecia, and there inside the food vacuole it is digesting the Paramecia. It's digested into simpler substances, right? And now through diffusion, these substances are slowly being absorbed by the whole cytoplasm, right? So that is what happens. Interesting, right? Yes. So now we'll go into Paramecia. So whatever became the food for amoeba in that video, we learn how that food takes in food, right? So yeah, in paramecium, unlike amoeba, which has irregular shape that can constantly change, paramecium is not like that. Paramecium has a definite shape always, right? Now, just like it has a definite shape, it also has a definite spot that is meant for digestion, and that is called the oral groove. So only through the oral groove it takes up food, and inside the oral groove and around it there are cilia, which are soft hair-like structures which brush the food inside the oral groove. Okay. Now, where do they brush it inside? To a food vacuole. So same way as an amoeba, once the food gets accumulated and there's no more food left to accumulate in a particular spot inside the oral groove, so once it becomes full, it gets enclosed in a food vacuole, and it separates itself from the oral groove, and it moves around in the cytoplasm during digestion, and finally the digested material is diffused around throughout the cytoplasm, from where it gets its nourishment, right? So again, I have a video by Craig Smith with me that I'll show you. You can check out his YouTube channel as well. So here you can see so many Paramecia. You can see the hair-like structures around it, cilia. And inside you can see the vacuoles, many vacuoles. And right there you can see the oral groove, okay, the elongated groove, right? So the cilia brushes inside the food, brushes the food inside the oral groove. And finally, when it can no longer hold any more food, a vacuole is pinched out, balloon-like. So here you can see clearly that the inside that food vacuole, the food is full. Now it has separated itself from the oral groove, and it's moving around the cytoplasm to digest the food. By that time, more food is getting accumulated inside the oral groove, so that more food vacuoles can be generated, right? So you can see so many food vacuoles around in the paramecium. So, yes. Now this food inside these food vacuole, once it gets digested through the process of diffusion, it spreads all around the cytoplasm, right? So that is the name of his channel, which you can check out. Yes, so that was nutrition and paramecium. So now that you have seen it in real time, I hope you can understand the diagram also now. You can just check it out once. On the right hand side, you can actually see the whole process. They have labeled it very nicely. So inside the oral groove, the cilia brushes inside the food into one corner, and a food vacuole is pinched off once it's full, and then moves around. Digestion takes place, and finally the waste material is expelled through the cell membrane. Right? So the basic process is diffusion, but here in the case of paramecium, the organism itself has a definite shape, and even digestion takes place in definite spots. So here itself, it's a little more advanced than amoeba, right? So there are specialized designated spots in paramecium. So now the complexity will slowly increase even in our chapter, and in the next lesson we'll learn about nutrition in human beings, right? So the big one for the next lesson. So I hope you understood till here about heterotrophic nutrition, the different forms and strategies, and as well as the nutrition in single-celled organisms, namely amoeba and paramecia, right? So see you in the next class. Thank you.